that you're going to use your pen and paper much more. And I think it's sort of trying to make the students not being digital all the time and closing down the computer screens.
This is the Game Changers Video Podcast. Stories of people, ideas, and technologies that are making the world a better and more sustainable place. I'm Michael Best.
And I'm Jonathan Winch.
In today's episode, we had Anette Hestbæk Jørgensen and Sine Zambach on our show, talking to us about the enormous impact AI is having on their school and in education in general. Anette is the popular principal of Aurehøj Gymnasium, a Copenhagen, Denmark school with about 750 students. And for those of you that are internationals, a gymnasium is the equivalent to a U.S. high school.
Sine is an assistant professor at Copenhagen Business School. She holds a PhD in computer science and a master's in bioinformatics. Her specialty area is artificial intelligence and machine learning. And she's particularly interested in how that works in education. She's also the author of a book, AI in High School.
Wow, this episode left my head spinning.
It didn't help that you spilled coffee on yourself at the beginning.
Yeah, a bit of an interesting start. As soon as the guests get into the van and I'm making an adjustment to a microphone, I poured coffee all over myself.
Yeah.
And the table and the equipment.
But the interview was amazing.
Yeah, man, I can't help but think what's going to happen to education. You know, we're at this turning point of some sort right now where it's really being challenged. And it's going to have to be reinvented.
Yeah, Anette and Sine had some pretty cool perspectives to share. What stood out for you as being a new perspective you might not have before?
Well, the fact that they referred to going back to pen and paper or pencil and paper,
Yeah.
that was a really interesting thought. You know, as a designer, I love it. I think it's a great idea. You know, using your hands and the paper, I think that's brilliant.
Some of the best ideas in the world have been generated that way. I mean, take Einstein. He had pen and paper. I'm not even sure he had pen. He had something in paper.
I wonder what he would have done if he had AI to help him.
I'm not sure that we're the people to think what Einstein sort of thought. You're really going to enjoy this episode. We sure did.
Anette and Sine, welcome to our studio van and welcome to the
Thank
Game
you.
Changers Video Podcast. It's good to have you here.
Yeah,
Thank you.
nice to be here. Thank you.
Nice to be here.
All right, so today, normally we have in the van, we have people or companies that are themselves game changers. Today, the game changer is AI, and the game that's changing is education.
Yeah.
And you guys are in the thick of it, right? You are trying to look at what does this mean for us as a school, and how do we tackle it? How do we integrate it? What's good, what's bad, and so on. Isn't that right?
Yeah.
Yes.
It's been with us for like 1.5 years now. So we are into it.
Yeah.
a
So
lot.
you've had enough time to think about it already?
Well, we started with Sine last year. She did some research on our school. How do the students apply to it? How do the teachers? What do they think of it? So I think that we've sort of been digging into it and exploring what is going on, but not that we are sort of experts in it at all. So it's really a game changer we've met here.
Yeah, and I mean, I have been out in many other schools too, and I think the pattern is still kind of the same, actually, that there is, people are experimenting around. We are all new in the game, in a sense, right? As I said, the disruptive technology really went into game 1.5 years ago. I mean, there has been AI for many years, but this type of AI is definitely something completely new.
Can I pause for just a moment and ask you then, before we go further, can you tell us more specifically, what kind of AI are we talking about here in the context of education and for our conversation today?
Yeah, because now I'm going a little bit back in history, right? Because there's been AI since the 1950s. But not until now have they been working so good. I mean, normally they have been based on rules, but now you put in a lot of data in the models, and they are actually good at both classifying stuff like X-ray pictures. Is it cancer? Is it not cancer, for example? But that's a technology that has matured the last 20, 25 years. But this AI now that is actually generating text or generating pictures, generating patterns, you can say, that's a new thing, particularly that it's doing it so good. There were already chatbots in the 70s, and we would consider them very bad and immature, right? But the ones now, they can really do a lot, and they can act as if it was a human who wrote it or made the picture, and you can hardly see the difference if you don't know the structure.
But I think the game changer we're talking about at my school, that's ChatGPT.
ChatGPT became the word of the year in Denmark last year, right? So, yeah.
Okay, so can you just tell us how is AI, and whether I guess that's really ChatGPT, but we'll just call it AI for the broader topic.
Yeah.
How's AI being used by it within the school at the moment? And here, let's start with how the students using AI.
Yeah. Well, Sina's made some research, but I think the big topic with our teachers is how do they use it to cheat. I think that's sort of the big topic at the moment. And we are trying to change that because we don't want to have that missing confidence between teachers and students. So this mistrust is not a good visit to have between students and teachers. So for the last year, we've been talking about how do they use it to cheat when they hand in assignments. It can also be a helper, and I really prefer it to be a helper more than a cheat machine. So it's sort of making the students understand how do you use ChatGPT or any other AI. I think we should say AI from now on. But how do we use that as a helper, as a starter? How can we get an assignment started with help from AI and not AI producing the whole assignment? But
so that's sort of coming into the area. Where do you think it is useful for students currently?
Yeah, I mean, there is a lot of different ways, and actually we should have a student in here too. I mean, they can tell a lot more. But those I have been talking with so far, it seems like for the students, from the students' views, they very useful for actually in class, also sometimes for the discussions and so on. That's kind of cheating. But it's also helpful as a writing buddy. You know, when you're blank page problem, it can get you started a little bit, help you get some ideas, and then you can improve it and so on. So that's definitely one of the things. Another important way of using it that I also use as a teacher is it helps defining things. So it can help defining a concept, and maybe also make a metaphor for the concept that you maybe couldn't find yourself.
So that's
when
a
you're a
reference
teacher,
tool
for
of a
example.
sort.
Yeah, if I want to teach some kind of theoretical, some complex concept at university where I'm teaching, then sometimes the student simply doesn't understand it, and it can be a great help to get a good metaphor
absolutely.
And that works in all the levels.
You referred to it as being like a coach, and you referred to it as being like a helper.
yeah.
Kind of the same thing, but one of the thoughts I have around that then is the flavor, the nuances, the style, the personality that coach or helper has becomes the same one across a very large playing field for all people using it.
Well, you can see that the ChatGPT is a very nice helper. It talks helpfully to you, and it wants to find an answer for you. So it's it can be motivating for a student to use an AI machine because you have some helpful teacher sitting there and ready to answer all your questions. And maybe it's not always the right answer you get. Correct answer, because it's really helpful. It's a helpful AI machine you're sitting with.
It's like a person who wants to help you and will tell you anything, just as long as they can help
nice.
you. Just to be nice.
Yeah.
And actually the students also learn from that and write nicer.
Yeah.
Interesting. So it's kind of encouraging in a way.
Yeah, it can be. So it's not all bad. There's some good things in there, and I think some of that might motivate the students. You said that they can, when they have a blank page and you can't get started on an assignment, well, it's nice to have somebody to help you start. And that's where we want to sort of use the AI as a support for the students to get started on a paper. So you can be helpful if you direct it, but you should not do your whole assignment through AI.
Right.
Because
Find the balance
then you
there.
don't learn anything, and we really want you to learn when you're in school. Yeah.
Okay, so what about where do you see the real downsides and what you've experienced so far, and perhaps also what you see going forward? Where are the challenges for you in integrating AI in the right way?
Well, you need to be pretty clever to prompt right, to ask the right questions. Because, as you know, it's a helpful servant who wants to give you answers. So you need to be able to prompt right, to put the right questions to the machine. So if you're not into your subject or topic and you put the wrong questions, then you can get a total wrong answer. We have several teachers telling about students writing an assignment on a book, and if you put the wrong answer, you get characters not even in the book or in the novel, or you have to know what you're asking about.
Well, are you offering any instruction in that? How to write better queries?
We're not doing that at the moment because it's still a new field for us.
Right.
But
I guess that's a class of the future.
But that's something that we're going to do this fall. We are going to train our students to be able to prompt right.
Yeah. And in a way, it's also nice for education sector to discover this, that you actually need some basic skills before you can actually start to use the output of ChatGPT. You have to have some basic skills. That's also what I have experienced. I had an introduction to programming course where I said, just go ahead, use it. And I gave some introductions to how can you do it? How can you make some good prompts? I really thought, I did everything. And now the report would be so much better than they used to. They actually became worse. So that's super weird. But that's some of the students wrote in their reflections that they just relied on the AI to do the job for them. And then they realized they didn't understood everything it came with. And sometimes it gave them wrong answers. And sometimes it was like old. Okay.
So do they become aware of this kind of notion that they have to maintain an open mind and question what's being provided by an AI tool?
Yeah.
You can't just take it blindly and run with it.
No. And that's in all subjects, right? That to learn to use it critically, to have a critical lens on it and see what is coming out. In some subjects, it's even one of the goals in social science and so on. They said it's super interesting because what's coming out, it depends on the data that has got into it.
What about teachers? How are they getting to grips with AI? And is there some sort of gap opening up in terms of the students who tend to embrace the new developments faster? How challenged are teachers here and how are they trying to adapt?
Well, the teachers, when they come to high school, they are really much into their own subjects and they want to be diligent. They want to be they want to be on top of something they introduce for the students. So being beginners in this field, it's not something teachers like. And some teachers think, well, I can try and play with this with the students. But I understand why teachers want to be able to handle what they're presenting the students for. So we did a whole conference day here at the school, dividing the teachers into different kind of subjects, because we have the science fields, we have the sort of more creative subjects. We have humanities and we have history and social sciences. So we divided our teachers into different groups because I think you can use it for different ways. Our math teachers say it sucks. It's not working at all.
That's right.
It's not a good. I think the calculator is better than using AI. So sort of the math teachers, they are sort of home safe. They don't think that it's going to take over.
But it isn't good for calculations, but the students use it to explain math concepts.
Yeah. But I think for the creative part, I think you can really use it as a toy and a tool to sort of make new pictures. You can ask it to make a picture for you, to put on the front page of an assignment or to do something very creative. So I think you have a creative power here.
it's making me think that it's like the playing field is really disturbed right now, where the curriculum and the actual courses being offered really need to be rethought and reinvented, perhaps.
Absolutely.
I mean, just looking at, how the critical thinking you mentioned, Sine. In the past, for decades, we always could trust sources because we went to sources that were usually vetted in some way and you could rely on them. Since the internet's been out, it's a little less and less, right? You have to be more questioning, but now you've got to be really questioning.
Yeah.
So will there be courses taught? Will curriculums be reinvented to help support this new structure dealing with AI? So
I think this is the one where, for me, it seems that critical thinking is probably the skill to come out of school with going forward. Because
it's the 21st century skills that we're talking about already. Yeah. They're even more important now, I think.
But I think it's super interesting, the question about questionable sources, because, there are so many of the old sources that are also super questionable. I mean, how many sources are there about witches that did
absolutely
crazy things, and you think they probably didn't do that, right? No. But the interesting thing here, we don't know the hand of the one who wrote this, except that it's of course ChatGPT or some other tools, but you cannot directly go back to the source and figure out who invented it, because that's also part of traditional source criticism.
So we also have to give the students grades, and we give them grades for what the work they're doing during the year and also for the exams. So I think it's been a big game changer in that perspective, because it's been very difficult to sort of grade the students now, because what are they doing themselves? What have them had some help to do, and who's been doing it? And it's getting worse and worse making exams, because it's in there. Everything is digital, because we've been very focused on getting our exams being digital, the written exams. So the tools are in the computers now, and it's very difficult to keep that out, because it's going to be in Office 365 in just a moment, and everybody's going to have it. You can't see whether the students are using it. So I think we are going, in some ways, we're going to go backwards in our sector and use pen and paper for some of our exams in the future.
Tell us more about that.
I think it's going to be, we are going to test more for some competences or some what have you learned in school in another way than we're doing now. The last 10 years, we have been focusing more and more on being digital on exams, and everything is in there. But I think we're going in another direction, and I think we're going to do that in the classroom as well, because the assignments, and it's sort of been there for quite a while, because you could always go ask Google.
Yeah, sure.
That actually sounds like a nice scenario. Right?
And for language teachers, it's very, very difficult, because we have had Google Translate for years. So this is not new, but this is sort of just coming in a wider perspective now, because we can't find the sources now. I think that's what's changing. It's more difficult to find the sources that you might have been using, because every time you ask ChatGPT, if you ask them, did you do this? They will always say yes, because they want to please you. And they like much more to say yes than to say no. So probably you're going to get, yes, I did this.
Yeah, or some of the more specific tools that does detect this, then they give out a percentage, like, oh, there is a 30% risk that this is made by me. And then who can decide that? And old plagiarism tools, they were more saying, this is exactly the same as page 3 in this book, so therefore it's plagiarism, right? You cannot do that anymore.
It sounds like a pretty nice scenario, though, as you're describing it, as your way of responding to this is use the digital tools for all of the learning process. But when it comes time to test an exam to find out if the students have acquired the knowledge they need, go back to a non-digital scenario, and then you really find out what they know.
So we're actually going to sell notebooks up at the office after summer vacation, because we want the students back on paper.
So it's either pen and paper, or maybe protected environment on computer with no internet access, Faraday cage or something, I don't know, or the other way around, right?
Yeah.
Where you say, but
Make
then we are all
exams
on
with AI.
Yeah,
and
then we are on the
show
same
you can
page.
use it. Yeah.
And everybody can use it.
So how do you see that working during the year?
That you're going to use your pen and paper much more. And I think it's sort of trying to make the students not being digital all the time and closing down the computer screens. That's also a big issue in Denmark right now. How much screen do we have during the school day? And it's sort of, we want the students to be more focused. And when you have your computer open, it's easy to be distracted.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's also one of the reasons why we're going a little bit backwards and going back to pen and paper. But I think something else is important. That's the motivation, because why would you be motivated to learn something if you can just ask ChatGPT or any other AI? If you have this helper with you, why learn something? And I think that motivation is something new. And maybe we need pen and paper to go back and be motivated, because I do need to remember something if I have a test tomorrow where I can only use pen and paper. So where do you get motivated to learn something?
And I think that's a good point, and it relates also very much to the course that I had, where the students simply got less motivated to learn to program, even though it was actually an elective in programming, right? So
They chose to be there.
And it's also like the Google Map. We have the helper, so we're not good at reading maps any longer because now we have a helper. Yeah. So each time we get a new helper, we get a little more lazy as a human being, because I think it's just the way we are, and then we can spend our time on something else. So it's a natural way of reacting. And I also think that we are in a time of big crisis. I think both grown-ups and students, they look at all the big crises at the moment, the climate crisis, the wars between Russia and Ukraine, and we have very big crises. And maybe this can give some hope, because maybe we can get some other answers to solve the crisis that we meet. So I think it's not all bad. It's bad right now because we need to learn how to handle it. But I think we can get some help out of AI as well.
So there's a lot of positives, what you're saying, along with some of the challenges that we need to think about. Yeah.
I'm curious to hear about any guidance or help you're getting in the world of education. Are the institutions like yours getting any guidelines or specifications from any ministries to help you embrace AI, or is it each institution for themselves figure it out?
I think there are a lot of right now. There's a lot of experience exchange.
Yeah.
I guess between high schools there is a lot, and then so among universities as well.
That sounds rather informal.
To figure out, because so now I just started with giving an example on where it didn't work very well, but I had actually also coordinated another course where it was super good. It was an innovation task, and the students already knew how to program, but now they should program an app with their innovative ideas in it. And normally it just ended up being an app where you could log in or something, and then that was it, because then semester was over. But now they were actually able to put in their innovative ideas by getting help from AI to create that. So there is all these new things that you can get help for.
Well, I think that most of the principals and also teachers, we all seek knowledge now, because this is something new. So we want to learn all we can learn about it. So I've been seeing a lot of webinar. How would you say that? Webinars and conferences on AI. It's a big topic in our sector right now. So it's a big topic on how to handle it. And both the ministry have been making conferences, and a lot of my colleagues, when we arrange some conferences or other stuff for each other, we focus on this issue now. So I think we are seeking knowledge, and I think we do get help from the ministry. Maybe the change in our systems, they're slower than we really needed it, because it takes time to change exams. Because if you change exams, you have to change the education you give the students up until, or the teaching up to the exam. And for some subjects, you have had that subject for 3 years. So if you change exam, you need to sort of prepare the teachers for that too. So, but it is an issue, and it is an issue in a lot of different perspectives.
It's one that requires a lot of resources to change as well, because it's a systemic change. It's a big thing. There's a lot of policies, a lot of documentations, a lot of other things. You know, it kind of needs extra resources applied to it. Are they available?
Yeah, it's like we're in such early days. You need to build the system to support the new way of dealing with education, and it's not yet there. It doesn't sound like. It's a lot of informal sharing.
Some first runners, some first movers playing with it, and then showing colleagues.
I wrote a book about it, by the way, AI in high school, which was also a way to try to educate high school teachers. I thought of that they might need to give some input. It was also there in the beginning of 2023, where it was still very new to a lot of people. I started to write it, and that was actually also to get. It was a mix of me as an AI researcher trying to explain different aspects of this, and then I had interviews with a lot of high school teachers to get their input. Of course, high school teachers who had already been playing around with it, to have some kind of best practice, or at least some kind of practice to share as a beginning, because there are many different ways we can help each other to get knowledge on this. And that was actually very much inspired by being a board member here at Aurehøj School, Aurehøj High School, Aurehøj Gymnasium, where we talked about this and how much it was a disruptive technology, particularly in language classes and so on. Right?
What do you see in the near and more distant future for your school? What will change immediately, or what do you feel needs to change to support this?
Well, I think that we need to work on how to motivate our students to sort of to use the AI reflective, to use it rightfully and not using for cheating. And I don't like the word cheating and that mistrust we have between students and teachers. So this is what we are going to focus on during the fall, cheating. We have a whole school day where we want to teach our students, both have them reflect on what is this powerful tool that you have right in front of you. And then we have a philosopher telling them how to reflect on, if I use this, what do I learn being here at school? So, and what skills do I want to take with me after the school? So sort of have some reflection on it. And then we want our students to learn how to handle it more specifically. But I think what is going to change? I think, well, school is school, and you don't turn over a school in half a year or a year. It takes decades. And I think when you walk into school, maybe some of that school reminds you of what you've been into like 30 years ago or 40 years ago. So school doesn't change that fast. And then again, it changes. So I think we're going to adapt a little bit to this new tool, but it's not going to sort of make a completely new school. But I don't think that we're going to be out of a job, because I think it's going to be even more important to have schools. Because we need to teach them other skills, I think. I think schools are going to be even more important. Maybe it's not the same skills that you're going to have focus on in the schools. Maybe critical thinking is going to be the most important way to focus on education in schools, because we want to make democratic critical thinkers. So you can't trust anything that you get, not even from the AI. You can't trust anything. So you need to be critical, and you need to have some knowledge in order to be critical. But I also think that we're going to be even more focused on the social qualities in school, because the social qualities are going to be even more important, I think. I think that being able to cooperate, interact with the other students, I think that is also going to be important. If we forget that one, if we think that, well, we get the computer, the AI, they can do all the stuff we don't need, then we can just sit back and we don't need to do anything. I think it's going to be even more important that we are being able to interact with other people and work together with other people.
I mean, at some level, really, the only interaction you'll be able to trust will be a physical interaction.
Yeah, face-to-face interaction.
Because I find it interesting that, in my generation, I'll take a generation just for myself here, right? I'm a little older than you guys. You're just kids to me. But in my generation, then where did I get my information from? I got it from books, from newspapers, from TV, right? So those were my factual references to the degree that was possible. Today, it's social media. But what we're also seeing with deep faking and all of these sorts of things.
You're putting the word factual in with social media.
This is the thing. This is the primary source of information for most of us, and certainly for younger generations. But what I'm seeing happen here is they're very aware of faking. And so I think perhaps the first step to critical thinking might be mistrust.
Yeah, but I think it's a super good point. And that was actually also one thing that has come to my mind from the very beginning when I also got a lot of answers from the students, was a lot of those young people were a bit... what they didn't like about the AI was that you couldn't trust it. And I was thinking, just because then you cannot cheat, right? But I think... But then I also talked with a Danish philosopher, Vincent Hendricks, about it, actually. And he said there is... also this concept about living in a bullshit generation, right? You don't know things. You don't know if things are wrong or right. And with fake news, quite often there is an intention behind it. I mean, with generative AI, there isn't even an intention. Okay, maybe the data that you put into it is, of course, intentional put into it. So that might have some content, but it can be tough for a young person to navigate around there, and for that they definitely need the education.
We can probably all agree that there's a lot of negative news out there about where the world is going.
We need more uplifting stories that can ignite hope and accelerate the changes toward the brighter future that we all want.
I want it. You want it?
I want it.
We're looking for stories that the world, it's going to be just a horrible loss if the world doesn't hear about your game changer.
Okay, that sounds like that's slightly overdoing.
That's over the top. Yeah.
But you get the general idea. So if your company has a game changer, get a hold of us. We would love to hear from you.
I talked about the helper part, and I think, and you asked me, what do my teachers need? And I think if you apply AI in an intelligent way, you can also use it as a helper as a teacher. You can make it do a quiz for me. I have this text. Help me with making a quiz. Or if I have a lot of very different kind of students in my class, can you help me? How do I make this better for this kind of students and that kind of students? So I think we can use AI as a helper, also as a school.
Definitely. I mean, also for visualizations for your PowerPoint, there is a built-in. It's not that good, but you can support that with your own ideas that you can then get created. I think that's also super useful. And also when you start to plan new modules and so on, you can get some input. I have also used it simply to make differentiated education, right? For people, or differentiated exercises. When students have different interests, you can actually make exercises that are interesting for them all about one topic. You can make it again back to math. You can actually make some really nice data set reflecting different things that are maybe more fun for the students or more fun for some students, and make something that's more relevant for other students and so on. So
more personalized, more relevant, and I mean, it's also
in the very near future, you can make a tutor for each of the students. I think that is going to come
individualized.
The students can make it themselves,
and it's available all the time. So if you make a tutor for each student, where the student is, which kind of level you have, you can make a tutor being sort of very focused on that particular student. And I think that is also going to be helpful for some of our students.
So, a question about the teachers. Can teachers cheat? One of the things that teachers, as I understand it, need to do a lot of the time is grade papers.
Yeah.
So is it cheating for a teacher at some point to be grading papers automatically with AI? Or is that an opportunity to create efficiencies in the system and maybe lift the quality and consistency of things?
It's going to be like tutor work, because maybe you ask the AI to help make the assignment, and the students make the assignment through AI, and then the teacher put the assignment in AI and have some feedback. So then we have tutor work, and nobody learned anything, I think. But I think they are going to do the research at home and ask AI or whatever you ask for your questions, and then you can discuss it at school. So I think maybe the round table would be a nice way to be working in the future. It's like the flipped classroom where you work in a different way. I think that's what we're going to see, and that's also why I say that we are going to be focusing on the social skills, on the way to work together, and I think those kinds of skills will always be needed.
And the world could do with more of that, frankly.
Yeah.
And it's super interesting with flipped classroom, right? Because originally it was that you come to class and you have the dialogue, and then you go home and watch a video passively. But now you can actually go home, have the interaction, and then go to the classroom and have maybe even more interaction or some kind of direction, right? Actually, one of my colleagues, he said, "No, I don't want to grade any essays. I don't want to grade the essays. They can make it with AI, and then I can grade it with AI. No way." So he actually changed that mandatory assignment to a synopsis oral exam. So he didn't use more hours than he was than he would do if he was grading it on paper. But the students just came with a synopsis, could be created by AI, whatever, and then he asked them and had a discussion about their projects. And that, I think it worked super good and was maybe even better than making the students write this essay. So that's actually also an option to look at if it's ending up in pseudo work. Can you simply change everything around it and do something that's maybe better?
Yeah, so the ways of working everything's up for grabs. Everything's disrupted, you could say, and anything might be a possible track or multiple tracks. Are there weaknesses in the school system that AI could change for the better?
There is definitely the thing that you have to rethink the curriculum, you rethink the exams formats, although it requires a lot of time right now. It's also something that makes you that you have to think about what is it that we are learning, what is learning really, what is it that the students should get with them, and so on.
So it's a chance to make it positive, like to throw things in the air, up in the air, and see how they land, and maybe make the whole system better. Is that?
Yeah, it's been quite a while since that ever happened in education, right?
I mean, there is also the question about social background. If you're parents, for example, are they well educated or not? You could say with AI, you actually have a one-to-one tutor. So potentially, and now I say potentially, it will equal maybe out a little bit the thing if your parents have a PhD or not. But you could say until you then have some upskilling also among the teachers so that they can teach the students, then you'll probably not see it. For example, I have already told my kids, how they can use it in a good way where they learn something and what they should never use it for and so on. And I think my kids, they are definitely not cheating. They are doing as I tell them. No, but whereas other parents, they are maybe not even aware that it exists, or they are just saying, no, you cannot use it at all or something, right? So there is, I think there is a need for us to come up on the same page. But the good thing is that it's actually not that hard to get there.
So you mentioned parents right there. So what can parents do to try and keep things on a good track in terms of AI? What should they watch out for? Should they be looking to see if their children are using ChatGPT in the wrong way, or what would you advise?
Talk with their children. I think you should as in many perspectives, that you should be interested in what your children are doing and how they're doing it, and do the talk with your children, because I think that's what you're supposed to do as a parent. You're not. Well, we have all helped our children, I think. As a parent, we want our children to do good in school or do good in whatever they are doing. So we all want to help our children. But I think to talk with their children about where to be aware of what can mislead you in a text or in a way that you get answers from AI. I think the children, they're not always aware of those difficulties, and I think you should talk with your children about. And
coming back with that would be that I imagine there's an awful lot of parents who have no idea.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to be rather scary for many of them.
Really don't know about AI. Are not in a position to advise.
No. Yeah.
Their children in any possible way, and I think that's another challenge.
But then they should start trying it out. It's at least the not so good ones are free, and they are still reasonably good. They can try it out with their kids. They can even try to play with it a little bit in the beginning. Make a fun story about something the kids are interested in, and so on. And then, depending on the age of the kids, they can, make it change genre. All these things that are a little fun. So that's a good start, also to learn about it yourself and learn about it with the kids.
So, in your opinions, can AI make a better student?
Yeah, so that's really the $1 million question. I would say as a researcher, because we don't know yet. It has been there for 1.5 years, and we can observe stuff, but we don't know. They can go faster in the question answering session. On the other hand, there are also skills they will that will slowly disintegrate.
Well, you could discuss what is a good student, and if you do get better at making questions, because making the right questions, putting the right questions, and that's important using AI to put the right questions in the AI. And I think you get a better student if you are better at making the right questions.
That's a key skill going forward.
Yep.
And it points straight at critical thinking.
Yeah.
It connects very well.
Yeah.
So answer is maybe it depends a little bit.
Yeah.
Annette, Sine, thanks for being on the Game Changers video podcast today.
It's been a pleasure to be here.
Yeah, it's been great. Great topic. Great perspectives provided.
Important topic.
Indeed. Yeah. So thank you so much.
If you've got a game changer or know someone that does, go to our website at gamechangersvideopodcast.com and send us a message. Your story could be on our show. And if you enjoy the show, tell a friend and subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until then, stay curious and keep changing the game. Thanks for watching and listening to the Game Changers Video Podcast.